Pay close attention. The news you are about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, we've got record high numbers of spending on Valentine's Day. More on the Parkland shooting, a town hall meeting that was recently had. President Trump's thoughts on possibly, maybe, what he might think is some of the possible solutions to dealing with that. And also we're seeing some more trouble in the Middle East, particularly with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But first we're going to start off with just how big is Valentine's Day? Well, on average, Americans spent this year, that is 2018, $143.56 per person this past Valentine's Day. That amounts to $19.6 billion. Now, that's a $1.7 billion increase over 2017. And of course, most of the spenders average between the ages of 26 and 35 years old. Spenders are buying everything from jewelry at $4.7 billion, which is the highest number, to candy at $1.8 billion.
So definitely going up.
That's right.
Well, 17-year-old David Hogg is one of the survivors of the recent Parkland school shooting. Conspiracy theories are popping up on social media saying that he is a crisis actor who takes advantage of tragedy for political gain. Now, Hogg's father is a retired FBI agent. Hogg says that it's disgusting that these people are trying to make this about me instead of the people who lost their lives. Well, despite these accusations, Hogg says that this has galvanized them and created a voice for them to fight with.
Interesting. At a recent Florida town hall meeting with political leaders and students attending, one student of the Parkland school shooting spoke to Senator Rubio, opening his statement by saying that it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and Nicholas Cruz, who was the school shooter at that latest Parkland. But here you are, he said. Then he proceeded to ask the senator if he could guarantee one of his friends that he called up from the audience, if he could tell him that he'll live long enough to serve our country, so to go into the military to serve the United States of America in fighting.
Well, an NRA official, Dana Loesch, recently spoke to the media exclaiming how the media loves mass shootings because it causes the ratings to go up. She said, crying white mothers are ratings gold.
Interesting. Well, in addition to the 8 states that already allow teachers to carry concealed firearms, 4 more are considering legislation to do the same. The science teacher in Colorado, who's carrying a gun in his class, concealed of course, said that in the case of an active shooter situation, he'd run toward the gunfire to find the shooter, but that he said his biggest fear is missing the target, the shooter, and actually hitting an innocent student. He also said, could I miss? Well, possibly, but would you rather have 50 kids killed or just one? So not the one who's the active shooter, but possibly one of the children who were kind of hit by friendly fire, so to speak.
Well, in a recent White House briefing, President Trump said that a lot of bad things are happening to young kids and young minds. We have to do something about what they're seeing. People are saying that video games are so violent, and then there's the movies. Kids are allowed to go see the movies, and there's sexism involved and violence involved and a lot of killing involved. The president said that that's something that will have to be discussed regarding the violence seen in the movies and video games being made available to our youth. So it seems like they're at least starting to make the connection between the video games, the violent movies, and what's taking place with these young people in the schools.
Yes, because those are apparently very powerful influences that are affecting the minds. Like you said, these are forming the minds of our children that is leading to the actions, you know, that are following the thoughts, things that they're constantly feeding themselves with. Well, the president had more to say this week as well. For coverage of the recent conservative conference, we now turn it over to Larry McGee. Larry?
The Oval Office winning grand personality of President Trump was back out and on full display this week at a conservative political action conference in Oxon Hill, Maryland. At the gathering, the president stated that he believes that his administration has had the most successful first year in the history of the presidency. Among his accomplishments, the president named the Keystone and Dakota pipelines and America's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, which the controversial leader says was disastrous and would have taken jobs from the U.S. and stifled its wealth. The president stated that the agreement would have made America uncompetitive with other nations such as Russia, India, and China, by preventing the U.S. from developing and using its various energy reserves, while other nations would have still been free, at least for a time, to use theirs. President Trump also cited the massive $700 billion budget recently approved for the military, a thing which he believes is necessary for the viability and survival of the country. In addressing the many challenges inherent in international diplomacy, the president saddened many by promoting the idea of giving respect only after it's been given, and also of retaliating against any nation which treats America badly. For President Trump, peace through military strength is still the chief objective. The president also took time to address and acknowledge the recent school shooting in Florida. President Trump began by invoking the typical reference to faith and prayer, to which many Americans have grown weary, and then gave his solution of meeting force with even more force as the best option. Have a listen.
Everywhere you go all over the country, in cities small and large, Americans of all faiths reach out to our Creator for strength, for inspiration, and for healing. Great time for healing. In times of grief and hardship, we turn to prayer for solace and for comfort. In recent days, our entire nation has been filled with terrible pain and sorrow over the evil massacre in a great community, Parkland, Florida. This senseless act of mass murder has shocked our nation and broken our hearts. This week, I had the honor of meeting with students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, with families who have lost their children in prior shootings, great families, great people, with members of the local community right here in Washington, D.C. Our whole nation was moved by their strength and by their courage. We listened to their heart-wrenching stories, asked them for ideas, and pledged to them, and I can speak for all of the senators and congressmen and congresswomen, all of the people in this room that are involved in this decision, that we will act, we will do something. We will act. With us on Wednesday was one of the families whose daughter didn't come home last week, a beautiful young woman named Meadow Pollock, incredible family. I had them in the Oval Office, incredible people. You've probably seen her picture. She had a beautiful, beautiful smile and a beautiful life, so full of promise. We wish there was something, anything we could do to bring Meadow and all of the others back. There are not enough tears in the world to express our sadness and anguish for her family, and for every family that has lost a precious loved one. No family should ever save and ever have to go in and suffer the way these families have suffered. They've suffered beyond anything that I've ever witnessed. A father drops his daughter off at school, kisses her goodbye, waves to her, she's walking up the path, and never sees her alive again. Gets a call can't believe it. Thinks it's a nightmare, wants to wake up from the nightmare. So we want to hear ideas from Americans of all backgrounds and beliefs about how we can improve security at our schools, tackle the issue of mental health. Because this was a sick person, very sick. And we had a lot of warning about him being sick. This wasn't a surprise. To the people that knew him, this wasn't even a little bit. In fact, some said, we're surprised it took so long. So what are we doing? What are we doing? We want to ensure that when there are warning signs, we can act and act very quickly. Why do we protect our airports and our banks, our government buildings, but not our schools? It's time to make our schools a much harder target for attackers. We don't want them in our schools. We don't want them. When we declare our schools to be gun-free zones, it just puts our students in far more danger. Far more danger. Well-trained, gun-adept teachers and coaches and people that work in those buildings, people that were in the Marines for 20 years and retired, people in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, people that are adept with weaponry and with guns. They teach. I mean, I don't want to have 100 guards standing with rifles all over the school. You do a concealed carry permit. And this would be a major deterrent because these people are inherently cowards. If they thought, like if this guy thought that other people would be shooting bullets back at him, he wouldn't have gone to that school. He wouldn't have gone there. It's a gun-free zone. It says this is a gun-free zone. Please check your guns way far away. And what happens is they feel safe. There's nobody going to come at them. This way, you may have, and remember, if you use this school as an example, this is a very big school with tremendous floor area and a lot of acreage. It's a big, big school, good school, a big, big school. You'd have to have 150 real guards. Look, you had one guard. He didn't turn out to be too good, I will tell you that. And the beauty is it's concealed. Nobody would ever see it unless they needed it. It's concealed. So this crazy man who walked in wouldn't even know who it is that has it. That's good. It's not bad, that's good. And a teacher would have shot the hell out of him before he knew what happened. And I'm telling you that would work because we need offensive capability. We can't just say, oh, it's a gun-free school, we're going to do it a little bit better. Because then you say, what happens outside? The students now leave school, and you got 1,000 students. You got 3,500 at the school we're talking about. But you have 1,000 students standing outside. The teachers are out there also. If a madman comes along, we have the same problem, but it's outside of the school. Or they drive cars. There are a lot of things can happen. I want to stop it. And I know it's a little controversial to say, but I have to say, since I started this 2 days ago, a lot of people that were totally opposed to it are now agreeing. They love their students. They don't want their students to be killed or to be hurt.
Needless to say, the hope of those tired of these sorts of tragedies is that one day those in leadership will move past addressing the symptoms and deal with the cause. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Katan, it seems at first like President Trump was saying about arming teachers. At first, people were pretty against doing such a thing, but now, as you mentioned, there is starting to become a following, if you would, about people supporting that idea. So we'll have to see where it goes.
Yeah, it seems like people kind of make what may normally seem to be irrational decisions when they're faced with a time of crisis or fear. And that could be very dangerous in a situation, especially like this.
Well, Special Counsel Robert Mueller has been working hard to get the former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort to cooperate with investigation as to whether or not Russia did indeed meddle in the most recent U.S. presidential election. Now, over the past few days, Mueller filed dozens of new charges against Manafort, coming at him from every angle.
A Dutch lawyer also charged in the conspiracy recently agreed to a plea deal. The lawyer used to work with Paul Manafort. And in the newest development, former Trump deputy campaign manager Richard Gates pleaded guilty to conspiracy as well as lying to investigators. So it is expected that Gates will provide evidence about the alleged crimes.
However, Paul Manafort is showing no indication that he will cooperate anytime soon. In a press statement, he claims innocence to any wrongdoing and intends to take it to court if he has to. Now, Robert Mueller has been collecting evidence about any connections between the Trump campaign, Russia, and Manafort.
Manafort's cooperation would help answer the questions of what took place at the meeting he attended with Russian leaders at Trump Tower, and also why did the Trump campaign push to make the Republican Party friendly toward Russia. But at this point, Manafort is not budging.
Well, the U.S. is not the only country dealing with corruption issues. Just this week, Israeli police arrested 7 members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's inner circle. Now, there were multiple charges brought against them, which included obstruction of justice and fraud. Now, just a few days prior, the police said they had collected enough evidence to indict the Prime Minister on corruption charges in 2 separate cases.
Among those arrested were very close confidants to Netanyahu, one being his former family spokesman, Nir Hafetz, that's right, Nir Hafetz, and the other Shaul Elovitz, the multi-millionaire owner of an Israeli news organization.
The Israeli police have joined the Israel Securities Authority in conducting this corruption investigation they call Case 4000, which led to the arrest. Now, they are focusing on examining if anyone close to Prime Minister has intervened with regulators on Israeli telecommunication giants' behalf in exchange for favorable coverage of Netanyahu.
Well, while the Prime Minister himself has not been named as a suspect in Case 4000, the media has reported police may question him.
While Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be in the hot seat, the president of Palestine is also feeling the odds are stacked against him. Now, it has been nearly 10 years since Mahmoud Abbas went before the United Nations Security Council, and time has not made enemies into friends. In fact, Mr. Abbas said the U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital threatened to kill the peace process altogether.
President Abbas addressed the Security Council saying, "In a dangerous, unprecedented matter, this administration took an unlawful position which was rejected by the international community to remove the issue of Jerusalem off the table without any reason. It decided to recognize Israel's capital and to transfer its embassy to the city of Jerusalem."
He continued, it did so ignoring that East Jerusalem is part of the Palestinian territory it occupied since 1967, and it's our capital. Now, some called for an international conference to mediate between the two peoples and demanded the U.S. suspend its decision on Jerusalem.
However, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley rejected the idea quickly, stating, "You don't have to like that decision. You don't have to praise it. You don't even have to accept it, but know this, that decision will not change." Wow. Powerful words.
The Israeli ambassador, Danny Danon, also adamantly opposed the idea. Danon said, quote, "Let me be clear. For thousands of years, Jerusalem has been the heart and soul of our people. Jerusalem has been our capital since the days of King David, and Jerusalem will remain the undivided capital of the state of Israel forever."
Well, Jeff, the Palestinians and Israeli issues have been addressed at the UN for literally decades now. They've been going back and forth. Of course, they have not reached any type of resolutions. They spent thousands of hours in discussion, not only at the UN, but in Jerusalem and here in the United States. They've created hundreds of resolutions, but of course, a peaceful solution to their problem still seems to be something that is beyond their grasp. Yeah. So, you know, it looks like our leaders are wanting to actually find a solution, but they're kind of grasping at the wind. People are throwing things out there. It's not being accepted by one party. It is by the other. And so we're still kind of in a state of confusion with no peace in sight. Yeah.
Well, in other news, Trump is still putting pressure on North Korea. The United States president intends to impose the largest package of sanctions ever on the North. Now, the goal is to get Kim Jong-un to end its nuclear and missile programs.
According to the U.S. Department of the Treasury, they most recently sanctioned one person, 27 companies, and 28 ships in further hopes of isolating Pyongyang.
Iran is threatening to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear deal if it will not gain any economic benefits from the agreement. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif says some foreign companies and major banks are still refusing to do business with Iran due to the U.S. policy of, quote, creating uncertainty about the deal.
Mr. Zarif warned that if the U.S. fails to extend the sanctions waiver in May, the nuclear agreement would be dead. He also blamed President Trump for violating the letter and spirit of the internationally recognized deal. He stressed that the Islamic Republic will never renegotiate the historic accord.
Zarif also rejected any ties between the survival of the nuclear deal and Iran's missile program. He was adamant that the country's missile capabilities are not up for negotiations or to be used as a bargaining tool. So, Katan, basically Iran is feeling the pinch because, as Mr. Zarif mentioned, banks are still refusing to do business with Iran, so they have some of their assets actually inaccessible to them. They're frozen. And as he also said that next month, when they're going to be looking at these sanctions again, it might be the tipping point for Iran if the U.S. actually fails to extend that sanctions waiver. So, you know, with the North Korea sanctions, the Iran sanctions, declaring Jerusalem the capital of Israel, the U.S. is still not making any friends in the international community.
And interesting, you know, why the U.S. is putting so much intense pressure on Iran, taking into consideration that the IAEA and other organizations have reported that Iran is living up to its agreement with this nuclear deal that was made. So it's really kind of like senseless that they're being pressured and not being able to have any type of economic development.
That's right.
Despite following the rules in these guidelines.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about these stories, you can contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494 or visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh by typing in info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget to check out the Yisrael Says and the Ask Yisrael programs to aid you in your study of the Holy Scriptures to give you a greater understanding. And you can find that by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com. And don't forget, those programs are free.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, another powerful message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.